I remember it was a Friday, November 22nd, 1963. It was about 12:30 in the afternoon. I'll never forget that day for three reasons. Reason one, 6 months prior to that day, I graduated from Lane Tech High School on the north side of Chicago. Reason number two, 3 months prior to that day, my mom died. I was 18. The third reason is that on that day, I was working my first job out of high school. I was driving a forklift truck at Victor Addy Machine at the intersection of Rockwell Street and Irving Park Road in Chicago. Now, my job was driving a lift truck, picking up parts. And if you've ever seen a lift truck, you know they have that contraption on the front of them. So you can't see frontwards when you're driving, and you can't drive frontwards. You got to drive them backwards. And I had my hand on the wheel and my arm on the propane tank. And I was coming out of the shipping department, and I noticed my friend Gary Behrens, also driving a forklift, coming towards me at kind of a high rate of speed. And we met back to back. And over the sound of the lift truck, Gary yelled to me, "Rich, did you hear Kennedy was shot?" And I thought, Kennedy was shot? Our shipping department's manager's name is Frank Kennedy. And I was just in the shipping department. He looked fine to me. So I said to Gary, "Do you mean Frank?" He said, "No, the president." I thought, the president? And sure enough, President Kennedy was shot in Dallas that day. Well, needless to say, our company closed, all the schools were closed, everybody was sent home. And for the next 3 days, me and every other American was glued to the television watching the details leading up to the assassination and the JFK funeral. Well, on that Sunday, they decided to move Lee Harvey Oswald, the alleged assassin, from the Dallas Police Department to a more secure location. And they were walking Lee Harvey Oswald through the basement of the police department. And a man who was later identified as Jack Ruby jumped out of the crowd and shot and killed Lee Harvey Oswald on national television right before our eyes. I'll never forget that. Well, let's see, it would be 2 years later, I was drafted into the Army during the Vietnam War. Now, in the Army, I was issued an M14 rifle. And that rifle is very similar to the Mannlicher Carcano rifle that apparently, or allegedly, Lee Harvey Oswald used to kill President Kennedy. I ate with that rifle. I slept with that rifle. I knew how to put that rifle together in my sleep. I fired no less than 10,000 rounds through that rifle. Trust me, I know that rifle. Well, 5 years after I got out of the Army, I got what I'll call my first real job as a sales manager in the machine tool industry. And one of my responsibilities was to travel around the country and visit all of our salespeople. Well, the first trip I took, guess where it was? To Dallas, Texas, where Kennedy was killed. So I took some time off and I visited the grassy knoll and Dealey Plaza, where the Kennedy assassination took place. And I actually stood on the X carved in the asphalt on Elm Street, where the limousine was when Kennedy was shot. And I looked back over my shoulder up at the window and the 6th floor of the school book depository building. And when I looked at that window and looked at where I was, I said to myself, that's a tough shot. I know I couldn't have made that shot, and I was qualified as a sharpshooter and a marksman in the Army with the M14. Well, that building was converted to a museum. So I went up to the 6th floor and I put on the headset and I listened to all the details of the assassination. And when we got to the window where Lee Harvey Oswald was when he fired those shots, it wasn't a straight shot out the windows. Instead, it was on an angle. And that limousine was traveling at 18 miles an hour down an 11-degree slope. So the target was moving away from him. And if you read the Warren Commission report, which I did, the government and the Warren Commission report wants you to believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was cocked in that window, and with that Mannlicher Carcano rifle and a cheap sight, he looked downrange, fired the first shot, ejected the cartridge, put a new bullet in, fired the second shot, ejected the cartridge, put a bullet in, fired the third shot, all supposedly in 7.6 seconds. And in those 7.6 seconds, the government and the Warren Commission report leads you to believe that he fired a bullet just like this, 265 feet downrange, and hit President Kennedy's head as a moving target that at that distance would have been the size of a grapefruit. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here today to tell you who I think shot and killed President Kennedy that day, but I am here to tell you who I think didn't. Thank you.